Welcome back to the Deep Dive, the place where we take the colossal mountains of information you sent us and chisel out the sharpest, most important insights.
And today we are tackling a big one, maybe the biggest.
We're not just looking at a company, we're examining a modern utility, an ecosystem, a regulator of global knowledge, and a constant source of controversy that really touches every part of our digital lives.
You're diving deep into Google.
And when we say Google, we mean the whole thing, right? Alphabet Inc.
Exactly, the whole multinational technology corporation. This is the entity that the BBC, I think it was, once called, and I'm quoting here, the most powerful company in the world.
And it's so much more than just that search bar on your screen. We're talking online advertising, cloud computing, consumer electronics.
And now, very aggressively, things like quantum computing and AI. The source material you shared with us, it paints this picture of, well, unparalleled success.
But also an equally unparalleled amount of legal and ethical scrutiny.
That's our mission today. We need to analyze this behemoth.
We've got comprehensive sources that detail Google's incredibly rapid evolution, the just sheer breadth of its products, and this continuous stream of criticism and legal battles that are really defining it right now.
We're going to track how an accidental research project turned into a multi-trillion-dollar giant, all while fighting governments and regulators pretty much across the globe.
So we're unpacking the origin of this colossus. We're looking at the forces, both the tech innovation and, the immense legal pressure that are shaping its strategy today.
It's a study in scale, really. It's about what happens when a company grows so large that its normal operational decisions basically become major regulatory events.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack this genesis story, which, like so many tech legends, it starts in a slightly dusty university setting.
Right, Stanford University.
The foundation of Google had officially kicked off around January 1996 with two brilliant PhD students, Larry Page and Sergey Brin. And they weren't, trying to build a business.
No, not at all. They were just trying to solve an academic problem. And before we even get to Page and Brin, it's really crucial to mention a figure who is often overlooked in this early phase.
Who's that?
Scott Hassan. He was the original lead programmer. Some people have even called him the unofficial third founder.
Wow.
Yeah, he wrote a ton of the original code that made the first version of the search engine actually work. His impact was foundational, but he decided to leave before the company was even formally incorporated.
That is a life-altering decision, isn't it?
I mean, think about it. He went off to build a career in robotics instead, founded a company called Willow Garage in 2006.
You just have to wonder what might have been if he'd stayed.
For sure. But back to Page and Brin. The real revolution here wasn't just the code itself, it was the theory behind it. Most search engines back then were just incredibly crude.
Crude is the right word. They worked on a system that was basically quantitative, not qualitative.
Right, they just ranked results by counting how many times a search term showed up on a page. And that was super easy to game, with keyword stuffing and things like that.
So Page and Brin had a better idea. A more academic system. They wanted to analyze the actual relationships between websites.
They asked a different question. They asked, who is vouching for this content?
And that profound shift in thinking, that's what led directly to the core tech that gave Google its initial edge, PageRank.
This determined a website's relevance not just by the number of links pointing to it, but, and this is the really crucial part, the importance or the authority of the pages that were linking back to it.
It's like an academic citation, right? But for the whole internet.
That's the perfect analogy. A citation from, say, the New York Times or a top university carries way more weight than one from a tiny unknown blog. PageRank essentially codified that trust metric.
So to rank high, you didn't just need links.
You needed links from other trustworthy, highly ranked pages. It created this virtuous cycle of quality, or at least perceived quality, that no one else could match at the time.
And that core concept is actually what gave them their original, and I have to say slightly less elegant, nickname.
Backrub.
Backrub. Because it quite simply checked the backlinks of websites.
And here's where the story gets even more fascinating. It shows that even with groundbreaking tech, genius is often iterative.
What do you mean?
Well, the source material points out that PageRank was influenced by a similar, earlier algorithm called RankDex. It was developed by a man named Robin Lai in 1996.
No way. Robin Lai, who went on to found
The very same. The founder of the Chinese search giant Baidu.
That's incredible.
Mhm.
And Page's patent for PageRank actually cited Lai's earlier patent.
It's a perfect example of parallel innovation. The mid-90s were just ripe for this kind of breakthrough, but Page and Brin were the ones who figured out how to scale it and commercialize it so effectively. They were just faster and more relevant than anyone else.
So we go from back rub and academic papers to the official name, Google. The name itself is a fantastic piece of branding, even if it started as a mistake.
It did. It's a misspelling of the mathematical term Google. That's the number 1, followed by 100 zeros.
And that massive number was chosen to signal their ambition, right? To organize what seemed like an infinite amount of information. They needed a name that screamed scale.
And that immense idea needed capital. It needed money to get them out of the Stanford office and into, famously, Susan Wojcicki's garage. The first crucial check came in August 1998 from Andy Bechtolsheim, the co-founder of Sun Microsystems.
He just wrote them a check.
A check for $100,000. And this wasn't just money, it was the catalyst. It forced them to professionalize. They had to officially incorporate the company just so they could legally cash it.
So that one check was the real start of Google as a business, not just a project.
Exactly. And pretty soon, other big names got involved.
Like Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon.
And venture capitalist Ram Shriram. They both came in during 1998, each investing $250,000. So between them and other friends and family, that initial funding round quickly got to about $1 million.
And that's what let them open their first real office in Menlo Park.
And with that capital, they made their first hire. Craig Silverstein, another PhD student from Stanford. He became their first official employee.
But the early story of Google isn't just about what they did right. It's also about the massive opportunities that others, specifically Yahoo, completely missed.
Yes. The great what if of tech history. The sources detail 2 critical moments. First, in 1998, Page and Brin actually offered to sell Google to Yahoo.
For how much?
For just $1 million.
$1 million, and Yahoo said no.
They said no. They thought their own content portal model was enough. That was mistake number 1.
And mistake number 2.
It came 4 years later. By 2002, Google was a proven success, and Yahoo CEO Terry Semel came back to them. He offered $3 billion for the company.
$3 billion. And Page and Brin turned it down.
They held out. They had the guts to demand $5 billion because they believed in their growth.
And Yahoo walked away. They wouldn't bridge that $2 billion gap.
And that decision by Yahoo is now seen as, one of the biggest strategic blunders in the history of the internet economy. By that point, Google was growing so fast that their early investors, Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia Capital, they started insisting on bringing in professional management.
This is where the last piece of that founding puzzle falls into place. That investor pressure led them to hire Eric Schmidt in 2001.
Schmidt was the seasoned Silicon Valley exec they needed. He was the adult supervision, so to speak, that the investors wanted.
And his arrival created that powerful triumvirate. Page, Brin, and Schmidt, the team that would take the company public and lead it through its most explosive period of growth.
A team formed because investors insisted on it. It just shows that moment a research project fully becomes a corporate machine.
Okay, so with Schmidt at the helm providing that management discipline, the trio takes the company to its first huge financial milestone, the 2004 IPO.
The initial public offering. On August 19th, 2004, Google officially became a public company.
And the scale of this was massive, especially since the dot-com bust wasn't that far in the past. They offered, about 19.6 million shares at $85 a share?
Which generated $1.67 billion. It immediately gave Google a market cap of over $23 billion.
Instantly cementing them as a top-tier tech player.
And what's really remarkable is how they did it. They didn't go the traditional Wall Street route.
No, they used a unique online auction format to sell their shares. They were trying to make it more accessible to regular investors, which really fit with their anti-establishment roots.
And this moment wasn't just about raising money, it was about securing the future leadership. The sources highlight this long-term pact they made.
Right. Page, Brin, and Schmidt agreed to work together for 20 years, all the way until 2024.
That agreement guaranteed stability and a unified vision right through Google's most explosive growth period.
Now, if PageRank was the intellectual engine, we need to talk about what was really fueling that massive market cap.
The financial fuel.
It wasn't the search results themselves, not directly anyway. It was, and it still overwhelmingly is, the advertising engine attached to those results.
The numbers are just staggering. In 2011, when Google was already expanding into mobile and other areas, a full 96% of its total revenue came from advertising programs.
96%. It was a
Yeah.
single product revenue funnel funding everything else.
And that model is just incredibly efficient and scaled globally. The sources give a great example. In 2017, of their huge profit, over $109 billion, 46% of that came just from clicks, the cost per click model.
And their ad methods are everywhere. You've got AdMob for mobile ads, AdSense for putting ads on other websites.
And the really complex stuff managed by the DoubleClick ad exchange.
The acquisition of DoubleClick in 2008 for $3.1 billion, that seems like maybe the most important strategic move they ever made, outside of buying Android.
It was absolutely pivotal. This wasn't just about adding new tech. It was about controlling the entire advertising infrastructure of the internet.
It secured all those critical relationships with web publishers and ad agencies.
And technologically, its main function was integrating data. DoubleClick specialized in using detailed user history and, interest projection to target ads. It meant they could follow you from your search query all the way to the content you consume on other sites, tying the whole advertising journey together.
But this incredibly profitable business model, it's had its issues from the start, right?
Yeah.
I see records here mentioning the recurring problem of click fraud.
Oh, yeah. As early as 2006, industry reports were claiming that something like 14 to 20% of the clicks Google was charging advertisers for were fraudulent or invalid.
That's a huge financial risk passed directly onto the advertiser. You're paying for clicks that never lead to a real customer.
Exactly. It highlights the pressure points in a system that's built entirely on automated bidding and just massive volume.
So beyond that organic growth, Google really defined its strategy by just buying its way into market dominance across different sectors.
Massive strategic acquisitions. These purchases weren't just about adding features. They were about eliminating rivals and acquiring crucial intellectual property.
The first huge one was YouTube in 2006.
For $1.65 billion in stock. That move immediately secured their dominance in the online video market. It turned a potential competitor into a foundational pillar of their whole portfolio.
Then came DoubleClick in 2008, which we just talked about, control over the ad pipes. But the acquisition that really signaled their move into patent defense and hardware dominance was Motorola Mobility in 2012.
That one cost $12.5 billion. It was their largest purchase at the time. And here's the key insight from the sources. The main goal wasn't really to become a great phone maker.
No, the real prize was Motorola's massive patent portfolio.
It was a shield they needed to defend the Android operating system, which was gaining huge market share, against patent lawsuits from competitors like Apple and Microsoft.
So it was basically a $12.5 billion defensive legal play.
That's what it was. It ensured the survival and growth of the platform that now powers billions of phones. It showed they were willing to spend huge amounts just to protect a core asset.
A couple of other major moves really solidify their dominance in navigation and AI. In 2013, they bought Waze.
For just under $1 billion. And that let them integrate Waze's unique crowdsourced features, like real-time accident reports and speed traps, right into Google Maps.
Instantly upgrading their own product and taking out a key rival in one move.
And finally, the acquisition of DeepMind in 2014 for a reported $400 million, that was their definitive push into the future of AI.
The impact of that was huge and symbolic. DeepMind's AI, AlphaGo, became famous when it beat a top human professional at the game of Go.
It's a crystal clear pattern when you look at it. They buy technologies that either defend their core advertising monopoly or promise future dominance in totally new fields, like AI.
If we tried to list every single product that Google or Alphabet runs now, we'd genuinely be here all day.
We really would. But looking at the source material, what's so striking is just the sheer overwhelming breadth of its consumer services and how dominant it is across so many essential digital fields.
It's almost impossible to live a digital life without touching a Google product multiple times a day.
It's the definition of a digital ecosystem.
Ah.
It's this huge, sticky web of interconnected services. I mean, think about it. They dominate email with Gmail. They control global navigation with Maps, Earth, and Waze. They are the productivity backbone for countless businesses with workspace docs, sheets, slides.
All synced to Google Drive for cloud storage. And don't forget the operating systems. They control the global mobile market with Android, and they keep pushing into laptops with Chrome OS.
And of course, video. YouTube isn't just a video platform anymore. It's a global content library. It's branched into YouTube Music, YouTube TV for live broadcasting, and YouTube Premium.
And on the hardware side, you've got the Pixel phones and watches and the whole Nest smart home ecosystem. Smart speakers, thermostats, Wi-Fi routers. It's everywhere.
It is relentless. But it's also important to remember that not everything they touch turns to gold. The sources remind us they have a long, long list of discontinued products that have ended up in the Google graveyard.
Oh, absolutely. That list includes some high-profile flops like their cloud gaming platform Stadia, the social network Google+, Google Reader,
Even the original Google Glass concept.
and their willingness to just abandon products that don't hit it big, even after huge investment. It says a lot about their culture. It's this intense, high-stakes experimentation. They're always looking for the next big winner.
And speaking of the next winner, this is where we hit the most urgent, disruptive moment in their recent history. The sudden, existential pivot to generative AI.
The rise of things like ChatGPT triggered what the sources call a company-wide code red directive in late 2022.
A code red in a company that big is basically a panic button. It was a direct mandate from senior management. It required that all of Google's most important products, the ones with over 1 billion users like Search, Gmail, Android, had to integrate generative AI.
And not within years, but within a few short months. This was an existential race.
It was, and they responded incredibly fast. They launched Bard, which has since been rebranded and integrated as Gemini, their direct competitor to the other large language models. But it's not just about text chat.
No, they've been developing advanced creative AI models as well.
Yes, things like Imagen, which is a powerful text-to-image generator, and Veo, a text-to-video generator.
Yeah.
These tools show they want to dominate not just in organizing information, but in generating new content from scratch.
They're also pushing AI deep into professional and educational tools. We see things like Notebook LM, which is designed for synthesizing documents using Gemini.
And Notebook LM has this really interesting audio overview feature. It generates these podcast-like synthesized summaries of documents. And then there's LearnLM, a set of models designed to be personal AI tutors. They're aiming to disrupt online education.
And they're already thinking about the ethical problems that come with this, right? The sources mentioned plans for something called Synthet Detector in 2025.
It's a sophisticated watermarking tool. It's intended to identify any content, text, image, audio, video that was generated using Google's products.
So they're future-proofing against AI misinformation issues.
Pretty much. If every piece of generated content is subtly marked as made by Google AI, it lets them track usage and potentially comply with future regulations.
And all of this digital ambition, it requires a massive physical footprint. We should probably give some perspective on the sheer logistical scale of this company.
It's infrastructure on a national scale. Google has huge data centers across North America, South America, Asia, Europe. A research firm, Gartner, estimated that back in 2016, Google was already operating 2.5 million servers.
And traditionally, they achieved that scale by using commodity by 86 hardware, right?
Yeah.
Basically the same architecture as a home PC, just run in massive parallel systems.
That's right. But what's even more telling about their control is their connectivity. To handle all that data, Google basically had to become its own telecom company. They've invested billions in building their own private network of submarine communications cables.
And we have the names for these things. Curie, connecting California to Chile, Dunant from the U.S. to France, Equiano, Portugal to Africa, and Grace Hopper, connecting the U.S., U.K., and Spain.
Think about that. They own the search platform, the mobile OS, the data centers, and the literal deep-sea fiber optic cables that carry the data. That level of control is just extraordinary.
But we can't talk about that massive infrastructure without talking about the environmental cost.
Right. The scale of their operations means massive energy consumption. In 2023, Google consumed 24 terawatt-hours of electricity.
And to put 24 terawatt-hours into context, that single company used more electricity in 1 year than several entire countries, more than Iceland, Ghana, the Dominican Republic, and Tunisia combined.
That is the cost of organizing the world's information. And yet, despite that massive consumption, the company has these highly ambitious environmental goals. It's a significant paradox.
They've been aiming for carbon neutrality since 2007, and their current goal is to run on 100% carbon-free energy by 2030.
They've even retroactively offset all their carbon emissions since the company was founded in 1998, which is a major claim. It just underscores how every single decision they make, whether it's tech or environmental, operates on a global scale.
So let's move from that global infrastructure to the more personal side of things. Corporate identity and culture. Google's brand was originally built on these really high-minded, almost idealistic principles.
But its actual execution in recent years has led to some intense internal conflict, especially as profit targets start to clash with those founding values.
That tension is just baked into their public identity. The official mission statement is so simple: to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful.
Which sounds noble, but for years it was overshadowed by that iconic, unofficial slogan that really defined their early culture: don't be evil.
Don't be evil. And that phrase was actually retained by Google, the subsidiary, even after the big corporate restructuring in 2015 when it became part of Alphabet.
Right, but Alphabet, the parent company, it adopted a related but, arguably much softer motto in its code of conduct: do the right thing.
And that tiny shift in wording is really symbolic, isn't it? Going from actively avoiding evil, which is a command, to just doing the right thing, which is more of a passive goal.
It definitely signals a change in priority. And if you go back to their whimsical roots, you see that early spirit in things like the Google Doodles. The sources mentioned the very first one in 1998 for the Burning Man Festival.
It wasn't just a quirky drawing. Page and Brin made it to let people know they were out of the office in case the servers crashed while they were gone. It was charming and a far cry from the sophisticated machine we have today.
And for a long time, the workplace culture at Google was legendary. It reflected that early spirit. They were constantly ranked #1 on Fortune magazine's list of best companies to work for.
Their philosophy was built on these progressive-sounding ideas like work should be challenging and the challenge should be fun. And famously, you can be serious without a suit.
The most famous example of this was innovation time off, or as everyone knew it, 20% time. Engineers were encouraged to spend a fifth of their work week on their own self-directed projects.
And it wasn't just a fun perk. It was an innovation factory. So many core Google products, Gmail, AdSense, even Google News, they all came out of these independent projects. It proves that giving people autonomy can create huge value.
And yet, since around 2018, that internal image of Google as a utopia has really fractured. It's been defined by serious labor issues and internal dissent. The most visible moment was the 2018 global walkouts.
Over 20,000 employees and contractors participated, protesting how the company handled sexual harassment complaints.
It was sparked by that expose about Andy Rubin, the father of Android, who got this massive exit package despite harassment allegations against him. After that massive public protest, the company announced that 48 employees have been fired over 2 years for sexual misconduct.
And even though the CEO, Sundar Pichai, reportedly supported the employees' right to protest, the internal tensions just kept escalating.
The dissent quickly spread from HR issues to political and ethical ones. Employees protested Project Dragonfly. That was the plan for a censored search engine for China.
Which was eventually canceled because of all the pressure.
Right, and they also protested Project Maven. That was the contract to build AI for military drones, a contract Google chose not to renew after a huge internal revolt.
And what's really significant is that the sources detail how workers later accused the company of retaliating against these internal activists. That tension, the company needing government contracts versus its employees' moral compass, it just became a defining feature.
And that dissent led to formal collective action. Unionization efforts followed. In 2021, the Alphabet Workers Union was founded.
And this is where we see the corporate reality clash hard with that progressive ideal.
Sure.
Court documents came out in 2022 revealing that between 2018 and 2020, Google had been running a secret anti-union campaign called Project Vivian.
And the goal of Project Vivian was explicit: to run a campaign to convince employees, and I quote, that unions suck. The exposure of that campaign just highlights this incredible tension between their public persona of openness and the very real corporate drive to control labor.
We also have the ongoing controversy around diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. That really came to a head in 2017 with the firing of James Damore.
The engineer who wrote that memo arguing that biological factors, not just discrimination, were why women were less interested in tech jobs.
And in the years since, the company has faced major legal liabilities. Google settled a huge gender discrimination lawsuit in 2022 for $118 million, covering over 15,000 female employees in California.
And showing a broader industry shift, the sources point out a big change in 2025. In February of that year, Google dropped its commitment to making diversity, equity, and inclusion part of everything we do from its annual investor report.
And finally, before we get to the regulatory saga, we have to talk about the massive controversies around tax avoidance.
The numbers here are just staggering. Between 2007 and 2010, Google saved an estimated $3.1 billion in taxes using a sophisticated but legal at the time structure known as the double Irish with a Dutch sandwich.
The double Irish with a Dutch sandwich, it sounds like a drink order.
It does. But it involved shuttling non-U.S. profits, first through Ireland and the Netherlands, and then to a subsidiary in Bermuda. This dropped their effective non-U.S. tax rate on those profits down to just 2.3%.
And while they did overhaul this structure in 2020 after a ton of international pressure, it still led to investigations and settlements, like that big 2016 settlement in the UK, where they paid £130 million in back taxes.
And we come back to that paradox theme when we talk about their environmental policy. On one hand, Google is super committed to renewable energy. On the other,
They simultaneously donate to prominent political groups that deny climate change, like the State Policy Network and the Competitive Enterprise Institute.
and maybe most ironically, they profit from climate misinformation. They monetize ad spaces on many of the largest climate disinformation websites. That tension between profit and principles, it's not a historical thing. It's a constant, ongoing negotiation.
Okay, this section is really the inevitable conclusion of all that scale. The scrutiny Google faces is truly global, led by governments challenging the company's very structure and its monopolistic control. Let's start with the European Union.
The EU has been the world's most aggressive challenger to big tech. They've been handing out these massive, multi-billion euro fines against Google for platform abuse.
The first record fine came in 2017, a staggering 2.42 billion euros. And this is because Google was found guilty of promoting its own shopping comparison service in its search results.
It's a simple case of self-preferencing. When you searched for a product, Google would prominently display its own Google shopping service right at the top, driving all the traffic away from competitors. This was later confirmed as a violation of the EU's Digital Markets Act.
So that set the stage for an even bigger fine in 2018. This one focused on mobile, the Android fine.
4.34 billion euros. This was for forcing Android device makers and network operators to prioritize Google Search and the Chrome browser.
It was a classic case of tying and bundling, wasn't it?
Absolutely. If a manufacturer wanted access to the Google Play Store for their Android phones, they were forced to pre-install and promote Google's own search engine and browser. It just locked out competitors.
And that fine was slightly reduced on appeal, but the core ruling stood. Google used its dominant mobile position to illegally extend its search monopoly.
The list keeps going. In 2019, another fine, this time 1.49 billion euros, for blocking rivals in the online ad market through AdSense.
Here, the abuse was about imposing anti-competitive contracts on third-party websites. Google basically forbade these publishers from hosting competing ad platforms.
Interestingly, though, in a legal twist, that specific fine was annulled in 2024. The court said the European Commission failed to actually prove there was harm to consumers or innovation.
Which shows that even though the EU is aggressive, regulators still have to definitively prove harm.
They do. But the action didn't stop. In September 2025, a new 2.95 billion euro fine was levied, again for giving preferential treatment to its own ad exchange within its ad server tools.
So if the EU was focused on platform abuse, the United States, led by the Department of Justice, has focused on the fundamental search monopoly itself.
And to really understand the value of that monopoly, you just have to look at how much Google pays to keep its rivals out.
The cost is breathtaking. The sources confirm Google paid Apple an astonishing $22 billion in 2022.
$22 billion in 1 year.
Just to remain the default search engine on Apple's Safari browser.
That single number tells you everything you need to know about the value of being the default. Being the easiest, most frictionless choice for billions of users guarantees ad revenue, which maintains the monopoly.
And that payment formed the core of the U.S. Department of Justice's antitrust lawsuit filed in 2020. They argue Google was illegally maintaining its monopoly through these exclusive anti-competitive deals.
And the regulatory hammer finally fell. In August 2024, Judge Amit Mehta issued a landmark ruling, finding that Google held an illegal monopoly over online search, a violation of the Sherman Act.
So what were the consequences? The DOJ proposed some pretty extreme remedies, right?
Oh, they were extreme. They included forcing the sale of the Chrome browser, ending all exclusive search deals, and even requiring Google to share search data with competitors.
The surgical breakup of their core power.
But the final ruling in September 2025 was a bit of a mix. Judge Mehta ruled against forcing the sale of Chrome or Android. He said it would be too disruptive for consumers.
But he did rule in favor of some key structural
He
changes.
did. He barred Google from having any future exclusive search contracts, so that huge Apple payment is gone. And crucially, he required the company to share key search data with its competitors. This is a massive change.
And at the same time, they were fighting on another legal front in the digital advertising sector itself.
Right. A 2023 lawsuit alleged a monopoly in the ad tech market. That led to a ruling in April 2025 confirming that Google operates an illegal advertising monopoly.
And that decision could eventually lead to a forced breakup of Alphabet's ad tech business.
The scrutiny is just comprehensive. It's across every single revenue stream.
Okay, let's pivot to the issue that affects every single user on the internet: data privacy and surveillance. Even back in 2007, Google was ranked as worst on privacy by some.
The privacy issues are systemic.
Yeah.
Just look at the high-profile 2020 $5 billion class action lawsuit that alleged Chrome's incognito mode was still collecting and tracking user history.
And Google ultimately settled that case in 2024. They agreed to destroy billions of data records collected while users thought they were browsing privately.
Destroying records is a huge concession. It's an admission that they breached user expectations.
And this was happening alongside massive GDPR fines in Europe.
A €50 million fine from France in 2019 for not properly informing users about data collection for ads. Then another €150 million fine in 2022 just for making it too hard to refuse cookies.
And then there are the really sensitive cases involving user health data. That 2018 collaboration with Ascension, Project Nightingale.
Where they secretly gathered health data on millions of Americans without their explicit consent, that triggered a federal inquiry. It just shows their ambition to move into every possible data domain.
And the issue of geolocation tracking is still a huge point of criticism, specifically the fact that Google collected location data even when location sharing was turned off.
And the subsequent use of that data by law enforcement raises huge civil liberty concerns. There was that documented case in 2020 where the FBI used a geofence warrant near the Seattle Police Officers Guild after protests.
A geofence warrant demands data from all mobile devices in a specific area, potentially sweeping up data from totally innocent people.
It just highlights the power of Google's data to become a tool of surveillance.
And finally, we have to talk about Google's deep and lucrative involvement in government and military contracts, which is a source of intense internal debate.
They have Project Nimbus, a $1.2 billion AI and surveillance deal with the Israeli military, which predictably sparked huge internal dissent. And we remember the story of Project Maven in 2017.
The AI for military drones, which they didn't renew because of all the pressure.
But despite that PR disaster, they're still aggressively pursuing military work. In 2022, they shared a massive $9 billion cloud contract with the Pentagon.
And more recently, in July 2025, they got a $200 million AI contract with the Department of Defense. It just clearly shows that for them, the profitability of this work overrides any past ethical hesitancy.
So what does this all mean for us, for the user, for the economy, for the future of the internet?
This deep dive really shows Google's transformation. From a clever Stanford research project based on a smart algorithm, PageRank, to this global, multifaceted AI, advertising, and data titan.
And its dominance across search, mobile with Android, and video with YouTube, it remains largely uncontested, even under all this pressure.
The story of Google is just a study in scale. It's a story where monumental tech success inevitably leads to unparalleled scrutiny. The company is so big that its every move is met with skepticism and legal challenges.
We've seen it play out in the multi-billion-dollar fines from the EU and the landmark U.S. court rulings establishing their monopoly.
It's that tension between what they say and what they do. They have the resources and the stated goal to solve global energy problems, while at the same time fighting off allegations that they're illegally crushing competitors and profiting from the same information ecosystem they promised to organize.
Right, sometimes even monetizing climate denial.
And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, the source material just reveals this critical ongoing tension. The memory of that original slogan, "Don't be evil," versus the current corporate pursuit of massive lucrative contracts in defense, in surveillance, in aggressive AI expansion.
Those things are central to its corporate strategy and its revenue streams now.
Which raises a powerful, unavoidable question for you, the listener, to think about. If this current wave of regulatory pressure, particularly that 2025 U.S. court ruling, if it successfully ends these exclusive search contracts, getting rid of those multi-billion-dollar default payments, and genuinely forces Google to share critical search data with competitors, What does the future landscape for search competition even look like?
Right. Will Bing, DuckDuckGo, or new AI models finally be able to build market share in the shadow of this colossus? And you have to wonder, how aggressively will Google be forced to pivot its entire global strategy if that foundational monopoly is finally structurally weakened?
The battle for the future of search is far from over. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the colossal world of Google.
We look forward to seeing what sources you share with us next time.